Looks like Sam Bankman-Fried committed the largest financial fraud in modern history, but he's not in prison. He didn't trespass in the Capitol. What's interesting is that you are not allowed to know the identity of the two people who helped put up Sam Bankman-Fried's bond. His lawyers even argued in court to keep the names masked to shield them from public criticism. Now, the media outlets took a ton of money from Sam Bankman-Fried, like Semaphore, haven't yet returned the money, that's stolen money. They don't seem very interested in how this has happened. Well, we are interested. We just finished a documentary, in fact, called Scam Bankman Fraud, the story of FTX. It's out on Thursday on Fox Nation. Here's a preview. One of his strategies was to clutter his sentences with technocratic jargon so no one could really understand what he was saying.
Alameda did have a big position open on FTX. That position, I think, was very over-collateralized a year ago. There was a total market collapse and specifically a large correlated collapse in its assets over the last month.
I am no cryptocurrency expert. I'm no finance expert, but I don't think you answered my question.
The technocratic jargon is itself part of the smokescreen too. I have a general rule of thumb. If you cannot explain it to a 14-year-old, that means either you don't understand it yourself or you do understand it and you're trying to confuse the audience for a reason that has to do with your own self-interested gain.
Mr. Bankman-Fried has been able to confuse interviewers by talking in circles.
Nothing that SBF has said since the fraud was exposed has been coherent even to this sophisticated observer of financial markets. And I think that that's not just an accident, it is by design. It is another deflection tactic.
So the man you just saw in that clip is one of the people who acted as a Sherpa for us as we tried to understand what was happening with Sam Bankman-Fried. It's Vivek Ramaswamy, a frequent guest on the show, executive chairman of Strive Asset Management. He joins us in studio tonight. Vivek, thanks so much for coming on. I loved your point, and I think it's one of the truest guides to other people's talking. But tell me why Sam Bankman-Fried seems to be treated so much more gently than your average criminal defendant.
Well, it's because he had the entire deflection tactic set up. And it wasn't just the jargon. It was the ESG smokescreen. It was the good guy who was engaged in effective altruism, funding Democratic candidates. He knew how to play the game to be able to create the appearance that he cared about something other than profit and power, when in fact he cared only about more profit and power for himself. But the thing that was most striking to me about the story, Tucker, is not how this is some sort of deviant who's so different than how the rest of Wall Street operates, but how familiar his story really is. It is the same story as we saw back in 2008. I think there are a lot of similarities. It's going to make a lot of people mad to hear this. There's a lot of similarities to what those ESG promoting financial institutions do today. Because what did SBF do? He took client funds without their permission and used it to advance his agenda without telling them. Guess what the largest financial institutions in the world are doing today? They're using somebody else's money without their permission to advance their own agendas. And so what I find most fascinating about the story isn't this one guy with curly hair who's 30 years old that was worth a lot of money and now isn't. That's just a detail. I think it's an interesting moment for everyone to look in the mirror who's in Wall Street and everywhere else and ask themselves how dissimilar his story really is to what even mainstream actors in financial markets have been doing since 2008.
It's a wise point. I mean, these are people who are motivated by a lot of things, but one of them is the desire to accumulate as much money as possible. We know that, it's fine. But we have regulators who are supposed to keep that within the bounds, like Gary Gensler. Where are they?
They're busy focused on advancing those same agendas, right? Why are they propagating ESG disclosure rules when, in fact, they should be focused on preventing people from losing money? Right? You would think this was an objective. And the irony is they're going to use this as a catalyst to say, well, now we need to have greater purview over regulating cryptocurrencies or whatever, when in fact, this is just a managerial class that's advancing a political agenda. And the more you advance a political agenda, the less you're doing the job that you're actually supposed to do. And you know it well, Tucker, that is the story of the administrative state, the SEC included, as we know it.
So just really quick, if it is true that what Sam Bankman-Fried did is not so different from what a lot of people are doing right now, are you concerned about the stability of our financial system?
So look, I've had concerns dating back to 2008. The thing that we didn't let happen in this country, Tucker, was when those banks actually erred back then, we should have let them fall and actually teach this system its lesson. Instead, the lesson we taught was the worse you act, the more likely you are to get bailed out by the system.
Totally right.
SBF was a young guy. That's the system he grew up. What else do you expect but a next generation of fraudsters do the same thing a decade and a half later?
And clearly his parents encouraged this. I mean, you could just imagine this kid pulling the same scam at 13. You know,
Yeah,
isn't he cute? He's so smart. Yeah, okay. Vivek, great to see you. Thank you for your very crisp analysis. Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson Tonight.